Hey everyone, my name is Gothix, and today I'm going to show you guys how to think. I actually already discussed this during a live stream, but as it turns out, the audio was really staticky because I forgot to put my headphones on, so that video was doo-doo, so I'm going to do this again for you. Hey, that rhymed. That's my dad joke for the day. Anyway, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about thinking beyond stage one, which is a concept that I learned from Tom Sowell, and he is a black economist that the left tends to hate. They want to take away the guy's black card, and that's usually for good reason because he can break down their arguments like that. He's a very brilliant guy. So we're going to talk about thinking beyond stage one, and you could also consider it being thinking outside the box, considering the slippery slope of things. And I'm going to make this argument around the fact that I believe most people in the world don't know how to think beyond stage one because they're entrenched in this sort of emotional line of thinking. And that's not good when we're talking about, for example, voting for people to run the country. That is the worst thing that you can do is think very emotionally. So let's talk about it. When you're jumping to a conclusion and you're advocating something in the heat of a moment, meaning you're entrenched in an emotional mindset, you're not allowing yourself an opportunity to think critically about what it is you're actually advocating for. I'm sure most of us can relate to being in a relationship with someone and then you end up having an argument, and next thing you know, both you and your significant other are yelling at each other and saying things that you didn't mean. So after the argument, oh, honey, I'm so sorry I said that. I didn't mean it. I was just angry. At that moment, you probably thought it was normal. You probably thought that it was okay. But again, this is when you are entrenched in an emotional state of mind, you're not thinking clearly. So today I wanted to talk about thinking beyond stage one, and I'm going to give you several examples as to how we can get a larger idea of what the big picture is instead of just thinking emotionally. So I'm going to switch over to my handy dandy whiteboard to illustrate how a lot of people are entrenched in this emotional line of thinking. So let's imagine for a second that most people are stuck in stage one. And let's just say this circle right here, that's a really bad circle, but this is stage one. And inside of this, we have, I'll give you a few examples. We have trans rights, racism, the pandemic, and we have abortions. That says abortions, I promise. Most people can't see beyond stage one. All they see is a situation where they want to help. They feel empathetic, they want to help, they want to do something. And what they don't realize is that there is something beyond stage one that is related to what's inside stage one. So I'm going to break this down for you. With trans rights, what they don't see is a few things, but I'm going to go for the most obvious. What they don't see is censorship. If you don't use my preferred pronouns, you're a bigot. Trans women are women, and if you disagree with me, you're a transphobe, and Twitter should ban you off their platform. So it's encouraging this sense of imposing censorship or self-censoring because you don't want to be smeared as a bigot or a transphobe or whatever. It's sort of manipulation tactics. Abortions. I know some people have their opinion on abortions. Your opinion does not matter in this situation, all right? I'm just going to tell you what it is. Outside of stage one, this is what is being encouraged here. It's the disregard for human rights. There are a lot of people that I know who were born prematurely, and there are a lot of states right now that are trying to get bills passed to allow abortions up to 9 months. That is the result of not thinking beyond stage one or not considering the slippery slope. You're at the top of the mountain right here, but you're not considering what your positions could eventually lead to. You're opening up that door for other things to happen. So with COVID, what's happening with this is compliance. Get this vaccine or else you're going to get fired. Let's see your vaccine passport, otherwise you're not going to be allowed in this store. Put on your mask, otherwise you're selfish and you're trying to kill my grandma. Compliance. And then we have racism, which leads to dependency. I probably spelled that wrong. Dependency, okay? Being dependent on government funding, being dependent on activism, movements, BLM, being dependent on representation. We need representation. No, you don't. So you are opening up the opportunity for this sense of dependency. You could also say victimization. This is stage 2, where most people are realizing there's all the action right here. This is where everything's happening, is stage 2. So the people in stage 2 are going to start clashing with the people in stage 1. Not by choice. This is just, unfortunately, what's inevitably happening. Because if I, for example, say that trans women are men, the people in stage 1, they're going to see transphobe. But I see compelled speech. Another example, people who don't want to be forced to take a vaccine, or they don't want to lose their job because they don't want to be coerced into taking it. Stage 2, they're going to say, this is my right to choose whether or not I want to inject this into my body. But stage 1, you're prolonging the pandemic. So what happens when stage 1 and stage 2 are at odds with each other? This is where demoralization. So demoralization is the result of a couple of things. We can look at it from the perspective of people stuck in stage 1 fighting with people in stage 2 and constantly at odds with each other. So, for example, if we use the gender example, people in stage 2 say there's only 2 genders, and the people in stage 1 are going to say you're a transphobe. Now imagine that back and forth, nonstop. The people in stage 2, they're going to start to feel very worn down. They're going to feel defeated. They're going to feel like everything is backwards, right? And then the people that are in stage 1, they're also going to feel demoralized because there's so many transphobes around, where like everyone's transphobic all of a sudden. We can also argue the same thing for the racism, right? People in stage 1, they see white supremacy, they see systemic racism, they see all this stuff that is oppressing black people, and then the black people that are in stage 2 are like, I don't see any oppression, white supremacy, what? I don't understand. And so it's that constant demoralizing of both stages, where everything seems backwards, no one is getting along, nothing makes sense. And once you do that, once you continue having this rinse and repeat of having people at odds with each other, the last stage is control, okay? Because if everyone is fighting in society, how do we fix it? I have some solutions, but it's not going to be a very quick thing. It's going to take time. It's going to take patience. It's going to take understanding. But we don't have time for that, right? If thousands and thousands of people are at odds with each other, that gives the government to come in and say, okay, martial law, we'll take care of it. Or we'll just take away your rights because you guys obviously can't handle your business, so we're going to help you. So that is the first example I wanted to show you. I'm going to show it a different method, but we're going to, instead of using a really ugly circle, we're going to do a little chart right here, okay? Let's do this way. Well, maybe I can do this way. That's fine. I'll just do this way. Okay. All right. So stage 1. Stage 1 is, let's use the example of harmful rhetoric, right? Transphobic comments, racist comments. These people need to be held accountable because it's perpetuating harmful stereotypes or whatever, right? So let's just say harmful rhetoric, and they'll usually call it hate speech. These people only see what I just mentioned. They just see harmful people, everyone's being terrible, they're saying mean things, it's going to eventually lead to something. What they don't realize is that there is a stage 2. Stage 2 is censorship. either you're self-censoring or online platforms are censoring you or deplatforming you for saying something that is deemed hate speech. Side note, whenever you hear hate speech, you have to ask yourself who gets to determine that this is hate speech. That's very important because 20, 30 years ago, me saying that that guy is still a guy wasn't harmful. It wasn't hate speech. But look where we are right now. And you have to ask yourself, what do these people have to gain by imposing these ideas? So the next stage, stage 3, inevitably, this is what happens when you start censoring people, and it's why I'm very direct in everything that I say. I make no apologies for the things that I say, and it's because after censorship, that's where you start to lead to silencing political dissidents. I don't know if you realize this, but there was a video that came out recently from Project Veritas, and they were talking with engineers that work at Twitter that have admitted, and we've known this for a long time. I've known this. It's very obvious that this has been happening, but they admitted that they specifically go out and try to deplatform and censor more people on the conservative side, and that Twitter is very they're more communist-like. A lot of their ideas are rooted in like social justice and Marxism. So they're biased with who they silence. So let me explain that to you. They are silencing one side of the political aisle. And that is very dangerous because if you silence one side of the political aisle, that is what leads to, for example, what happened in Nazi Germany. That is what happened during the Great Leap Forward. You get rid of all of the political opposition, you silence them, and you can do whatever you want. So the other stage right here is more government control. More gov control. I can't spell. Since we mentioned gender identity, I have to keep using that because I think it's the most, I hate this term, harmful, because it's been weaponized to manipulate people into self-censoring, but it literally is harmful because these people that are advocating for gender identity and stuff like that, they're not considering the consequences of their advocacy. They're not considering the bigger picture beyond stage 1. So let's start again. Stage 1 is gender identity. You want trans people to be more included. You want more diversity. You want kids to learn about transgenderism. This is the emotional stage where you're having that desire to help. We want to help these people. Trans rights. Okay, I got you. Stage 2, they don't see. Well, I think they do, but I'll explain in a second. Stage 2 is mental health crisis. I could also call it a spiritual crisis, but I know some people hate when I bring up God. I'm going to do it anyway. But either or, mental health or spiritual health crisis, the people in stage 1, they don't consider, okay, this idea that men think they're women and this idea that women think they're men, or neither or both, that is a mental or spiritual crisis. That's something going on internally, and it's not normal. Okay, they're going to say that it's normal, which is why a lot of activists have been trying to separate gender dysphoria from transgenderism. So if you don't know what that is, gender dysphoria is the mental disorder that causes people to think they are the opposite sex. And lately, a lot of activists and organizations have been trying to separate and say, oh, no, it's not a mental disorder. It's an inner state of being. Okay, then I definitely believe this is a spiritual crisis. Stage 3, what they don't consider because they're still stuck in stage 1 is, let's say, burning bridges. When you say that these biological males can enter women's bathrooms or they can play in women's sports, inevitably, whether you like it or not, you're going to burn bridges with people that don't agree with that. When you say we want kids to learn about transsexualism and gender identity in schools, inevitably, you're going to burn bridges with people that disagree with that. When you say you better call me by my preferred pronoun. Otherwise, you're a TERF and I'm going to report you to your job so you can get fired. Inevitably, you're going to burn bridges. So this is the very disheartening part about not being able to think beyond stage one, is because you're here, you don't see what's happening in stage three. So you think you're helping people, but what you're actually doing is hurting them, because after a while, you're going to start to become very bitter and jaded towards trans activists or trans people. You're going to generalize them as a whole. Stage four, we talked about this earlier in another chart, censorship. Because of the hateful rhetoric, the harmful rhetoric, because of burning bridges and people naturally pushing back on this ideology, they're going to look at this as, oh, well, everyone's acting more transphobic, everyone's acting more bigoted, so we should start deplatforming people to decrease the amount of harmful rhetoric, to decrease the amount of hate speech. And we have 5 suicides. Suicides are going up, 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 up. So people in stage 1, they think suicides for the trans community and the non-binary people, which is political propaganda. They think that suicides are going up because people aren't using the preferred pronouns, or because men aren't allowed in women's bathrooms. They don't realize that because you've ignored stage 2, ignored the reality that there is a spiritual or mental problem that's happening within the person, and then you've ignored that and said, let's burn bridges by infiltrating spaces that our biological makeup shouldn't allow us to be in, you are now enabling more suicides. Because what is happening is the people who don't believe in this ideology are going to feel worn down. They're going to feel like they're being targeted and they didn't do anything wrong. All I said was there's 2 genders. Why is everyone calling me a transphobe, right? And unfortunately, some people become very depressed as a result. And then you also have the trans people that are benefiting from all of this advocacy once they realize that, hey, everyone is being a lot more intolerant towards me. I thought that everything would feel more diverse and more welcoming. Why does it feel like everyone is hating trans people more? That is why. If you don't think beyond stage 1, you're going to inevitably burn bridges for the people that don't agree and the people you're trying to help. And then we also have the last stage, which is, I'm theorizing here. Well, kind of. I'll explain in a second. Why did I write like this? All right, so more government control or invasion. If you are a politician and you're running for office and you villainize the other opponent as a bigot, he is a racist, he doesn't respect trans people, and then you say, but I respect trans people. I'm going to get you representation. I'm going to make you feel more inclusive. I'm going to help the LGBT and trans community. I'm going to do that, right? You are putting yourself in a position to say that this is the only politician that can take care of these problems. And naturally, the people that would benefit from that would vote for them. This is why a lot of people went out and voted for the incoherent Mr. Joe Biden, because he said that because Trump was racist, we're going to come in and get rid of white supremacy. We're going to get rid of institutional racism. He used black people, and he's using the trans community. And then if you want to do a test, maybe you think I'm bullshitting, ask yourself, what side of the political aisle, I know there's multiple parties, but what side of the political aisle do you think is pro LGBT or pro trans rights? Democrats or Republicans? and if you say Democrats, you've proved my point. You've literally proved my point. So the other thing that I theorize could happen, and I hope it doesn't, is an invasion of a foreign enemy. Regardless of how you feel about gender identity or this idea that there are multiple genders and non-binary and whatever, regardless of how you feel about that, that's not how the rest of the world operates. That's not how the rest of the world views gender. The majority of the world, from the beginning of time, has always seen men as being protectors, men as being strength, the people that are at the front lines of battle. I don't care about your social constructs, I'm just telling you what the reality is outside of this bubble that you're thinking in. So, how do you think a foreign enemy would react if they saw American men, running around in dresses, traumatized because they were misgendered? They're gonna look at us as being weak, and they're going to take advantage of this. They ain't gonna do anything. They're too busy complaining about being misgendered. They're too busy arguing about restrooms and women's sport. And that is, unfortunately, why I believe these things go hand in hand, because the president of the United States should understand that historically men have been viewed as being strong and being at the front lines of battle. He should know this. His whole administration should know this, but instead he's propping up this idea of gender identity. And to me, it looks like, hey guys, come in. Yeah, beat us up. Yeah, because everything is backwards. And the last example I'm going to give you is a follow-up to my post on locals, where I addressed the recent mass shooting that happened in Texas. And this is another form of an emotional reaction that people have whenever there's a mass shooting, and I can totally understand it. Nobody wants to see innocent people die. Nobody wants to see children die. But let's talk about this. So, the first stage is get rid of guns, or, gun policy. People that are thinking in this stage are still very emotional. They want to do something to make change, and I totally understand that. But what they don't see beyond this is historical context, history, and tyranny. They don't consider all of the people in other parts of the world throughout history that were at the mercy of a tyrannical government who forced them to obey laws or forced them to do certain things because nobody had an opportunity to defend themselves. I always bring up my friend Lily, who grew up under Mao Zedong and communist China, and she often talks about the Tiananmen Square massacre, where they sent over, I think, 200,000 troops to basically shoot and kill crowds of people. And this doesn't mean that, having a gun would stop a tank from coming at you, but just showing your gun and knowing that force would be met with force is enough of a deterrent to make people think twice about doing something. History shows us that tyrannical governments only impose what they think they can get away with. Depending on where you are, we already have tough gun policy. We already have background checks. It is already difficult to obtain a firearm, and then doing this is going to make it more difficult for innocent civilians to be able to defend themselves. The other thing that people don't consider because they're at that stage one of thinking is, like I said in my other chart, spiritual mental health crisis. What causes someone to commit these violent acts in the first place? That is not being addressed when you say get rid of guns. The other thing that people don't consider, maybe you've heard this phrase these last couple of years, but especially with the COVID mandates, rules for thee, but not for me. Do you think the politicians who are advocating for gun control are going to give up their guns? There was actually a video, again, bringing up Project Veritas, this hidden camera footage where they asked these politicians, why don't you put a sign on your front lawn that says, we are a gun-free house? And you know what all of these guys said? No, that would just welcome people into the house. It would be an open invitation. Yeah, no shit. And this is why there are other areas that have really strict gun laws, but you'll see that a lot of violent crimes using knives, for example, are a lot higher in these places. And that's because thinking at stage one doesn't address the spiritual or mental health crisis. So someone that wants to hurt another person is still gonna do that, even if it means just picking up a knife or whatever they have at their disposal. And then you also have to consider the violent crimes that are already happening, a lot of gang violence, most of the gun violence that occurs comes from handguns. Politicians want to get rid of assault rifles. If they actually wanted to stop gun violence, they would start by addressing the gang problem. So here's the question. Rules for thee, but not for me? Do you think gangs are going to give up their guns? Do you think politicians that write the laws are going to give up their guns? No. No, they're not. So that was my final example that I wanted to show you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please hit that subscribe button. And if you have a suggestion for another technique you would like me to talk about, or maybe you need help thinking about a specific topic, let me know in the comments. I really enjoy doing stuff like this, and I hope it helps. And if you're someone that maybe feels targeted by what I was talking about in this video, the best thing that you can do is admit that you were wrong. Because once you do that, you could move on and learn from it, grow from it, because that's how we evolve as human beings and as thinkers. Not everyone knows what to do when they first do it. Mistakes happen. We get that. Let's just grow. So my name is Gothix, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Thanks for watching. If you want to keep my grift going, consider picking up some official merch by visiting nosisnos.com/Gothix or joining my locals community at gothix.locals.com for more content. As always, you can help amplify my message by giving this video a thumbs up and by sharing it online with your friends. Until next time.